Tell me something only the doctor knows.
Clara, I suppose I'm the only one who knows how I feel about you right now. How funny you are. So funny. How pretty. And the truth is, I'm starting to like you in a way that is more than just... Oh!
Hey, this is Sam with Fuck Yeah, Clara Cosplay, and thanks for watching our very first video. We're going to be making these videos to kind of share some tutorials, show the process of how I make some of my cosplay pieces, and also maybe give you some tips for finding items on your own or making things and make your cosplay experience better, more exciting, and fabulous. The piece we're going to be doing today is this badge right here. This is the piece that Clara wears when she is fighting the Cybermen army. This is the screen accurate piece right here. This is a vintage German army hat pin. So needless to say, it's kind of hard to find. I got this on like Germany eBay, which shipping was horrifying. Luckily you don't have to go through that because I've been making a few clay versions right here. Let me show you the finished one. Here's the clay version. And here is the original. And for comparison, there you go. So I'm going to show you how I make these. And I'm also going to be making the unfinished versions that look like this available in my Etsy store. So you can either buy the unfinished version or you can buy the finished clay version from me. One, you save a little bit of money and do the painting and the gluing yourself. Or two, buy the finished version out of box, and there you go, you have that. Also, if you don't feel like buying the clay versions for me, you could always just use clay and sculpt your own version of the badge. It might not be accurate, but it's definitely, you know, an option to do it yourself. So I'll show you how to paint that and make it look as realistic as possible. So alright, we'll get started. First off, what I did with the original vintage piece is I made a mold out of it. I made it out of this Alumilite putty, and I'll do a tutorial someday if you're ever interested in making molds. Obviously, if you don't have the vintage piece, you know, this doesn't really matter that much, but I just thought I'd show you kind of how I do it. So this putty is really great because it gets some really great detail in there, a lot more detail than if you were trying to sculpt it yourself. So the clay I'm going to be using is Sculpey. You can use any kind of polymer clay. You just want something that will bake in the oven. I chose gold because it's closest to the color that I'm going to be painting the badge. So I'll take a little bit of this and you kind of just smush it up to warm it up. It's easier to work with that way. The great thing about using a mold is that I can be like super messy when I put the clay in. It doesn't really matter because I'm going to call the excess off later. So now I'm going to remove the clay from the mold, and when you do this you want to make sure that you go slowly and you don't want to stretch the clay out because you'll lose all that detail. And now I'm going to take my friendly X-Acto knife, sharp and dangerous, careful kids, and I'm just going to cut away the excess clay from the outside so it looks nice and clean. Okay, now that I'm all done cutting away the extra clay, what you're going to do is you're going to put your little badge in the oven, and whatever clay you're using, you'll have instructions of what temperature and how long to do it. I think mine is 275 degrees, and I think I put it in for about 8 minutes. You don't want it to get too crispy. You don't want it to be flexible either, so it'll have guidelines on how long to put it in. So now imagine me putting my clay in the oven. Like I said before, I'll have these versions available in my store, so if you want to do all the painting yourself, they'll be exactly like this. They'll have been made from my mold and baked in the oven and sent straight to you, so you can put on whatever kind of badge you want in the back and paint it however you like. And if you get your own, you can follow along with my instructions. So the paint I'm going to use for this is called Testor's. It's a model paint. It's in this tiny little jar. This is just gold. I like these because they give a really nice gold color A lot of paint can sometimes just look a little brown, but this is oil-based paint and it gets really nice kind of shine on it. The one thing about this paint is, since it is oil-based, you can't really wash it off your brushes with water. You have to get a special paint remover. For me, I just sacrifice brushes because I can't be bothered to buy the remover. Get a little bit of this and I'll paint it on. If you find that the paint is going on too thick, you want to make sure that you use the brush and kind of wipe some of it off, because you want to make sure that the detail of the clay comes through. Also, I tend not to paint the back of these because when I glue the pin on later, the glue will stick a lot better to just the plain clay than if it had been painted. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want it to dry fully, because the next step I use a water-based paint and it can kind of not sit too well on the surface if this paint is still wet. So let it dry for a while and then move on to the next step. Now for this step we're going to do what's called a wash. What it is, it's just some dark, we've got black and brown paint that we mix together, and we add a lot of water to make it watery, and it'll do a really nice effect, and I'll show you how to do that. The paint I use looks like this. It's just an acrylic water-based paint. It's just an acrylic paint. These are super cheap. This is, I can't even tell what brand it is because there's paint all over it. But I use a black and a brown and a tiny bit of green. You can leave that out if you don't have it, but I just read somewhere once that it kind of gives that bronze look to it that the original vintage one has. So what you do is you're going to put some paint on a surface like this. This is just the old Tupperware top, and mix a nice brown black color and mix it with a lot of water so it's pretty watery but you still have pigment. The next step is just to take your badge and brush it on. And the thing about the wash is, because it's so watery, all of the color will settle in the cracks and it will give that old vintagey look that makes it look like it came from the 50s or 40s. I am historically inaccurate, but occasionally so is Dr. Who. And if you make your wash too dark, you know, you can kind of just go by eye, and sometimes you need a little bit more brown, sometimes you need more black. It just depends on your preference for how the badge looks at the end, how old you want it to look. I try to go for a good balance between black and brown, a dark brown, forest brown. Another thing about the wash is, because it's so watery, you can have paint going places you don't want. When you set it to dry, you want to make sure you don't really move it or bother it, because the paint can kind of drip places. But once it dries, all the color will be set where it was. So you'll just let it sit, let it dry, and it will do its thing. Okay, so let's see the original and see if I'm on the right track. Looks pretty good. Let it sit until it's completely dry. You don't want to be messing with it when it's still wet. You'll get paint everywhere and it won't be fun. Okay, and the last step is, once your badge is dry, you're going to take a pin back, and I'll show you the kind I use. They look like this. And the great thing about these is it's got a nice big flat surface on the back, so you can glue it on really nice and sturdy. Another tip is to, if you can, find this glue. This is E6000. I use it a lot for jewelry applications. It's just super strong, super stinky, but the great thing about it is things don't pop off as easily as it would with like hot glue. Or Elmer's glue, if you like to go the kindergarten route. I do not recommend that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put some glue on the back of the pin. And I'm just going to push it on the back of the clay. You want to push down kind of hard. Also, if you want, you can kind of just smooth down the glue in the back. I find that that kind of just keeps it all nice and tight and more sturdy. Give it a good press. And then you're going to set it aside and let it dry. Once your glue is dry, that's it. And you've got an awesome badge you can go defeat the Cybermen with. For reference, I'll show you the original and the clay version. I hope that helped with your Clara cosplay search. Again, if you'd like to buy any of the finished badges from me or the unpainted versions, you can go to my Etsy store. Here's a link right here. And also don't forget to check out our Tumblr if you haven't already. Fuck yeah, Clara Cosplay, right over here. On our next video, I want to try to do a tutorial for the Nightmare in Silver skirt, and hopefully I'll have a pattern up for that sometime soon. And you're well on your way to creating a full Nightmare in Silver cosplay.